Welcome to the Your Courageous Life podcast, where we explore what it really means to transform fear, burnout, and perfectionism with the practice of courage. I'm Kate, author of the books 100% Fully Alive and The Courage Habit, creator of YourCourageousLife.com, and head of the CLCC Coach Training Program at TeamCLCC.com. If you're someone who feels deeply, thinks critically, and wants to stay grounded in a world that can feel like too much, then this is the podcast for you. Learn evidence-based and heart-centered tools to practice courage so that who you are on the inside becomes how you live, lead, and show up on the outside. And now, let's get into today's episode. All right, today's podcast episode is definitely one that's very hard for me to record. It's one that's vulnerable. It's one that comes with a lot of thinking about how my words will impact others. And it's also one that feels freeing, liberating. Today, I'm going to start talking about my experience of depression and tie it into how to start wanting your life again. So if you are someone who feels like you've lost some kind of spark, you feel like you're going, what's going on? Something about my life feels very, very off. I'm going to speak to what my experience was. You might relate to it. And then I'm going to actually talk about specific things that go into how to start wanting your life again. And if you hear that sentence and you go, whoa, that's me, I want that, that might be a sign that this is for you. So, like I said, I'm first going to start with talking a little bit about my own experience, because the most obvious sign that something was off in my own life was that I stopped wanting anything. And I could only see in hindsight that there was a before time and a depressive time. Though even reflecting on that now, I don't recognize any particular moment or mark that drew the line between the two. What I know is that in the before times, I wanted my life wholeheartedly. I was invested in the plot, as the kids say. Every year there were plans, delicious and audacious, and presence and consciousness. And the idea of challenging myself to make that trip happen or try out that new thing or to grow when I had no idea what I was doing was enlivening. In the depressive times, my life was marked by a supreme lack of enthusiasm, of not wanting anything in particular. What do you want for dinner? My husband would ask. And I'd shrug and say, no preference. In the before times, I enthusiastically looked at cookbooks and went for a grand Sunday grocery shop, picking the perfect fennel, splurging on a bottle of truffle oil for a particular recipe. I don't remember when I stopped caring what was for dinner or for lunch or for breakfast. I was still hungry. So the obvious indicator of serious depression, lack of appetite, wasn't presenting itself. And then one day it occurred to me that I was never craving a particular taste for anything. And I thought, where did that go? What happened? Where did that go? Or I'd have a fully unstructured weekend, no big tasks to undertake, all the time in the world to do whatever I wanted to do. And I'd sort of squint and try to remember how I used to love unstructured days. Writing. I was a writer once upon a time, a creator with words. I'd try to remember the last time I'd sat down to write or create anything. I couldn't remember. In the before times, I had so many ideas that I kept a voice recording app on my phone so that if inspiration struck while I was driving, I could hit record and riff on the idea safely. In the depression times, creation was not even occurring to me. Instead, all I wanted to do was watch television. And first, it was just an hour before bed, then 2 hours, then from dinner until bedtime. And never newer shows, always reruns. Grey's Anatomy, So Reliable, Downton Abbey, Mad Men. At first, this sense of depression and something being off limited itself to winter. Do you want to sled with us? My husband would ask. Our house in Colorado had this slight hill in the backyard, irresistible if it was freshly covered with snow. I tried to want to participate in this delight. My kid all suited up in snow pants, trudging up the hill, sliding down, squealing, laughing with my husband. And the best I could do was watch from the back door as they slid down the hill, crying because I felt so lost and quickly wiping away the tears once the two of them were coming back inside and pretending I had only stayed in to make hot chocolate for them when they were done. And then the depression crept into spring. I no longer felt the hope and lift of longer days and more sunlight and warm sun on my shoulders. And then it crept into summer. I remember on that same hill, my husband in summer set up a slip and slide in the sunshine. And he said, "Come out with us," on one of those hot summer evenings where we had waited all day for the direct sun to move off of that hill. And it was 6 p.m. and warm and there's plenty of light out. I said, "No, I just want to stay in. I'm tired." And I remember sitting on the couch without turning on the TV, listening to my daughter's shrieks of delight outside and crying again because I felt so out of touch with whoever I once was. What happened? Where did I go? In the before times, I had wanted to run my own business as badly as I wanted to breathe. My business had survived through multiple social media changes, rebrands, a couple recessions, a legal dispute over a trademark, haters who tried to twist around what I was saying, a pandemic, copycats. And through years of running a business, I had tenaciously fought to keep it alive. It had not only survived, my business had thrived, growing into a multiple six-figure business regardless of dire economic climates. But then the wanting of running a full-time business had disappeared. In the before times, I looked forward to a fresh Monday morning so that I could get to work. I loved it. In the depression times, the narrative in my head was that I had already said everything I wanted to say. I was no longer relevant. No one cared what I was trying to put out in the world. And that all that work I had once loved, is too much. It's too exhausting. It's too much. And when I set down my business, I thought I was only taking a break. But then I couldn't quite motivate myself to pick it back up. In the before times, I knew what was going on with my friends, close friends, acquaintances. I always responded to the text, returned the call, remembered the birthdays. In the depression times, people reached out and left messages, not realizing that I felt so incapable of a reply. They'd text me, "Hey, how are you? How are things?" And I would read their messages and I'd sit there and I'd try to think, how am I? And how are things? And I'd think, how do I find the words to say anything even remotely honest about how I am and how things are? And I didn't want to lie, and I felt so exhausted that I would tell myself I'd reply later. And then I didn't. And then I'd feel guilty about it, and then I'd pull up the text again and try to think of what to say, and nothing ever seemed quite right. Where did I go? This question came to me as I started to wake up to the fact that some part of myself had gone missing. Where had that woman gone who had taken the risks, put herself out there, written books, spoken out against injustice, delighted in life's simple pleasures, and truly felt, in so many ways, 100% fully alive? I'd think to myself, I swear I used to be someone who felt a thrill when she smelled that perfect used bookstore smell. I used to be someone who could take a backcountry drive and the sunlight on the side of a hill made me feel connected to the world. I used to be someone who wanted to read all the books, write all the words, paint bright colors on a canvas, turn up the music and dance with my whole heart, righteously stand up for what I believe in, give what I have to share with those in need, study Italian, trade ridiculous memes with friends, try new foods at restaurants. I used to walk into the room with my husband and say, "Babe, I just had the best idea." And now I kept wondering, where did I go? What happened? Where did I go? Now, let me be clear with you listening to this. All these years, I could and did wake up in the morning and get out of bed. I could and did maintain a morning routine. I started working in corporate. I was friendly with my colleagues. I was professional. I was a hard worker. I got promoted within only a few months, multiple times. I never missed deadlines. I never had a rough day where I told anyone off. I never went MIA because I was too depressed to show up to work. I kept exercising regularly. I bought groceries. I remembered to sign permission slips. I made Target runs. The bills were paid. My hygiene never suffered. I never lost or gained significant weight. I mostly slept through the night. But I also faked my quote-unquote happiness with those around me. For my kids' teacher at school or their parents, all smiles, all good here. When doing after-school pickups and my kiddo would get into the car, a bright, "Hey, sweetie, how was your day?" followed by questions about her life, her friends, the drama of grade school recess, so that there would be no awkward silence where she might suspect that maybe mom is not okay. I asked to pet people's dogs. I said please and thank you to cashiers and waiters. I signed up for women's circles and sat in them and listened and made small talk, hoping to make a friend. Smile, 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 ask people questions about themselves, smile, affirm their choices. Wow, that's so awesome. How exciting. And how fake. How far from the authenticity I used to claim, no matter what it sometimes cost me, because that was the price of living a courageous, truthful life. Where did I go? Also, I cried in the shower. Like a lot. I've learned how common crying in the shower is, especially for women. The shower is a place where the people you love can't hear you crying, which was important to me because I didn't want to burden my husband or scare my kid. I could hold it together pretty well a good amount of the time until evening hit, and I'd take a shower before bed, and that's when I could let it all out. I used to go on to podcasts and tell everyone how brave it was to cry, how we all needed to allow ourselves to cry with compassion, that it was healthy. And now I was hiding it and I was ashamed of it. Where did I go? Also, during this time, I felt numb to beauty, yet pissed off and betrayed by life. I felt incapable of absorbing any of the beauty around me or feeling grateful for how good I knew I had it. It was like some invisible force kept me from being able to take in how beautiful our home was, or take in my husband's love, or feel how lucky I am to be a mother to my incredible daughter. I knew that by all modern standards, I'm so lucky, yet I didn't feel lucky. And when I wasn't feeling sad and devastated by that knowledge, I felt pissed off. I wanted to shake the universe and say, "Are you kidding me? I have genuinely tried to be the best person I have known how to be. I have doggedly pursued an intentional and courageous life. I have sincerely put my efforts on recognizing the places where I can be shallow or an asshole or judgmental or impatient, and I have tried to shift my patterns. I have faced uncomfortable truths. I have taken risks, all in the name of living a brave and courageous life where I could fulfill a vision of being a loving force for good on this planet, and now I'm in hell and I don't know how to get out. Are you fucking kidding me? I wondered if it was karma, some kind of retribution. I had walked through hard spaces before, but not for literally years without a significant period of relief. And I'd ask myself, Kate, where did you go? You know that your desire to grow has never been a bargaining chip you use with the universe. It's not a trade. You weren't trying to grow who you are or be a force for good in the world to get something back from the world. You were doing that because it's who you want to be. Why are you playing the victim here? And then there were the not so great thoughts. And when the not so great thoughts would come, the I want to go to sleep and not wake up thoughts, I would sigh heavily. I felt so trapped because I had read the research on what unaliving yourself does to those you leave behind. And I felt like the only thing I knew clearly during a time that lacked so much clarity was that I was not going to do that to my husband or to my kid. I was, in fact, hiding most of my depression from my husband and especially my kid. So I felt trapped, living a life that I knew I was supposed to feel so much gratitude for because I had so many good things going for me, yet that gratitude felt inaccessible, yet the sad, mad feelings were overwhelming, and yet I also lacked motivation or energy to change anything, all while some data-driven, strategizing, cognitive part of me was going, Kate, this is depression, and was telling me to get some help. Yet some other part of me was refusing to get it, which made no logical sense. And from the outside, you'd never know that I was struggling with maybe I don't want to be alive thoughts because I was functional and smiling if you ran into me on the street. That was my experience of depression. And it does not fit into classical definitions that diagnose depression that I've ever studied. And in case you have some thoughts about this that you're wanting to email me now and tell me, well, this is the type of depression that I'm not actually open to receiving those emails. So I want to be upfront about that. My experience of living with depression those years was that I did not feel good enough to want to live, but I didn't feel bad enough to plan to die. Now, here's what I want to add and tell you as someone who has traversed some kind of bridge with all of this and who is acutely aware and still reflecting on and processing and understanding the experience. This was all growth. At the end of the day, it has been growth. At the end of the day, there is something on the other side of the bridge. It was all growth. It was the pain before the gain. If you are still currently in the trenches of all this, I want you to know I'm aware of how this sounds. I'm also aware that maybe you need to hear from someone who truly gets it, that there is something waiting for you if you are willing to keep trying. Maybe you need to hear me say, hey, depression is lying to you. So let me confirm that to you. Depression lies. Being depressed is in some ways like being under the influence of a drug. It colors your thinking, your processing, how you interpret events. So having shared about my experience, if you relate to anything I've said so far today and you want to start wanting your life again, then now I'm going to share with you the things that turned it around for me. If you genuinely want to get out of this kind of hell, and I think you probably do, I can provide some insights. First thing, to start wanting your life again, find support now. Out of all the connections I had in my life, there was only one person who doggedly refused to let me simply disappear. One. I will be forever grateful to that person for continuing to call me, text me, email, even reach out to my husband when I didn't respond to try to get my husband on my case. That person knew that something was not okay. They knew that I would never simply drop off like that unless something was seriously wrong. And once I accepted that person's help and support, it was truly the first light that cracked through. Now, not all of us have that one person in our lives. And that's why I say find support now. If that's you, let me be the person saying, do not accept the space that you are in. Go hunt down support. One of the tricky things about being in the depression is that if people stop reaching out to you, the depression tells you the story that it's because they don't care. So if you feel that way now, I'd like to tell you the truth. It isn't that they don't care, it's that they don't know how. It isn't that they don't care, it's that they do not know how to show up for you. They may not be aware that you're depressed. In my case, that was definitely going on. As I've described, I was hiding it. I was hiding it from my husband, who knows me better than anyone in the world. They may sense that you are depressed and not know how to hold that. Or they think they'll make it worse by saying the wrong thing. Or maybe they are secretly barely holding it together themselves, and they think that they can't hear your experience or it's going to take them down further. In that case, that's not about you. That's their depression telling them lies. There are some people who really are self-absorbed, and that's why they aren't reaching out. I'll speak to dysfunctional relationships in a moment. But the focus in this moment is find support now. You deserve help. People will help. Please call a therapist. Please go to a community center offering drop-in support. Call the hotline if it's getting that serious. Tell your husband or wife or partner or a trusted friend what's really going on, even if you think that they won't understand. Say the words, I'm worried about myself and I need help. I need eyeballs on me right now. There's a saying in recovery circles that you are only as sick as your secrets. If you currently relate to my own story of depression, please stop keeping it a secret. It does get better, and it is harder when you keep it a secret. Next thing for how to start wanting your life again. Start moving your body a lot. This will feel like the last thing you want to do when you feel so unmotivated, but I swear to God, it's a doorway into feeling better. Consider that most of what feels so awful about making yourself move your body more is in the lead up to actually getting out the door for the run or putting on your workout clothes. So commit to, I'll just do 10 minutes as a trick to make yourself do it. Walk, run, lift weights. There's a guy on TikTok, Iron Sanctuary. He sells t-shirts that say, I lift weights so that the bad voices go away. He's very open about his experience of depression, and he's on point. Biologically, we know from research that exercise has strong benefits for your mental health, but I think psychologically there's something about moving your body and feeling like you have temporarily triumphed over the challenging feelings of hiding out that makes you feel more powerful. It will start to make you want your life again, to move your body. Next thing, to start wanting your life again, interrupt the depression routines. I've shared here that my biggest depression routines were crying in the shower and hours of television every night. The routines that actions, the habits that reinforce depression need to be interrupted. Over the course of all my work on courage, I've talked a lot about the cue, routine, reward loop. With depression, you feel the cue of depression, you go into those routines like watching hours of TV, and you get the quote unquote reward of at least not feeling worse, at least controlling something in a life that feels out of control. That's what those routines are really about, survival. So to interrupt those routines, I'd take cold showers. It's kind of hard to cry in the shower when it's cold. Or I'd intentionally delay my routine of watching television by just 30 minutes, which would force me to look around and find something else to do. It was a tiny shift, but one that I could build on. So ask yourself what those depression routines are, those habits that feed the depression are, and find tiny ways to delay or even entirely interrupt the routine. It makes a difference. To start wanting your life again. This is a tough one, but let go of people that leave you with the sense that you are hard to love. Sometimes we stop wanting our lives because we are taking our cues from the environment we are in. The people around us can influence our views of ourselves. And that's much more true at times when you're struggling and feeling vulnerable. When you are barely hanging on, and on top of that, you are being criticized subtly or overtly, or judged, or talked about behind your back, and you try to hang on to those people, hoping that something will change, or changing yourself, hoping that it will change others. It's like breathing in toxic smoke. It won't kill you immediately, but it's doing invisible damage that will add up. One of the gifts, and it still shocks me that I would say gifts of this very challenging time in my life, is that for decades, I had had some of those long-term relationships where I spent years trying to change the relationship by looking at my part, what I could have done or said that contributed to things not being functional, how much more could I stretch into love or patience, or trying to accept people unconditionally. Years of my life, far before I was ever depressed, years of my life, thousands of dollars, and God only knows how many hours of therapy or coaching or books or workshops on trying to make these relationships loving and connected, or at a bare minimum that I was willing to settle for, make these relationships respectful, even at times where we differed on how we thought about something. In the depression times, the gift I'm speaking of here was that I was so unhappy and I felt so fragile, like any criticism from those relationships could be enough to completely do me under, completely send me into a tailspin of if they say I'm an awful, terrible person, I must be. I felt so fragile that purely out of survival, I stopped working to try to improve things and I started limiting contact. And as I started limiting contact, their opinions of me weighed less heavily. And I started feeling better because I no longer needed to brace myself for possible conflict. And because I stopped putting myself in that kind of environment, I got braver around saying what I finally did say. This isn't working. I love you. I care about you. I believe we are both doing our best. And somehow we are creating scar tissue with our interactions, and that doesn't help either of us. So I am choosing to exit the relationship. It is one of the hardest things I've ever done, and yet I genuinely believe that it was the healthy choice. In some of these relationships, I took the route of directly stating this to the person. In others, I took the route of not directly saying it because history had shown me that if I did, everything would be combative. And so I simply stopped sharing details of my personal life, stopped agreeing to meet up. I now treat that relationship as I would a coworker. If we need to communicate because it's necessary, I offer a simple message that is polite and direct, and that's it. So if you're nodding your head as I describe this type of dynamic, consider what it's like to take a break or space from them. Consider what it might be like to let go entirely. By all means, I'm always an advocate. Take accountability for your place in the conflict because that's integrity. But the freedom here for me is understanding that I alone cannot, quote unquote, save a relationship and putting on my own life vest first. If I am already barely keeping it together with my mental health, the judgment and criticism is not going to help. If you are barely keeping it together with your mental health, other people's judgments and criticisms of you are not helping, they're hurting. Next, to start wanting your life again, and I'm gonna soapbox on this one. Get ready. Start interrupting the depression narratives. These are the internal narratives or beliefs or stories you tell yourself that say, I don't feel like it. I'm too tired. No one will care if I'm there. What's the point? It won't work out. They'll think I'm stupid if I try that. They'll get mad at me if I do that. I can't. I don't know how. I don't have what it takes. These are fear-based narratives and they have to be interrupted and reframed or they will run right over you and control you. Let me tell you something. During the depression times, there was one year I did more than 365 days straight of Byron Katie turnarounds. Have you heard of Byron Katie? The Work? She's got some great books and worksheets. I did 365 days straight. Straight. I didn't miss a day. I started receiving coaching again, something I had avoided when things were at their worst, and my coach challenged me regularly with cognitive reframes. And if you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you know from other podcasts I've recorded that positive reframes are validated by research. This is my soapbox. It's actually not toxic positivity, as some people call it, to notice and question these harmful internal narratives and to turn them around into something that's more helpful. Again, it's not toxic positivity to reframe unhelpful narratives. And I get very salty about this because there are coaches and self-help gurus popping off on social media about how that's toxic positivity if you take a harmful, powerless, depressing thought and you reframe it. For someone like myself who went through a pretty serious depression, if I had listened to those people, I would be worse off. So purge your social media of anyone spouting that bullshit. Please. Go on to PubMed, which is a free website with tons of clinical research. Go search for the term cognitive reframing. Go look at the research yourself. When you are in a hole, you need to interrupt and question and reframe unhelpful thoughts. Period. Full stop. You need to do it relentlessly as a way to find your way back to yourself. I am a dog with a bone on this now, on this topic, because this was the thing that made the biggest difference for me to start wanting my life again. When I was most depressed, I was steamrolled by these powerful or powerless, sad, fear-based internal narratives. The more I let them run, the worse I felt. The worse I felt, the more I let them run, and so on. It's a downward spiral. So I get very salty about the people who go onto socials and shit all over the cognitive reframing without understanding the research behind it. And I get especially salty if those people try to critique coaches like myself who are a stand for reframing unhelpful, depressing, fear-based thoughts. I'm over it with there's something wrong with the coaching industry, and I'm the only one brave enough to name it. The coaches that tell you to reframe your thoughts or adopt a more positive attitude, they're just promoting toxic positivity. No. Intentionally and consciously and purposely reframing my thoughts and adopting a more positive attitude and more positive mindset saved my fucking life. So no. In reality, when you interrupt and reframe unhelpful thoughts, it's not going to make life all magical and sparkly. Especially if you're deep in it with depression, you'll feel like a fraud at first. You'll try reframing, and something that's sad within you is going to go, this is fake. You don't really believe this positive stuff. There's no toxic positivity happening when you consciously, intentionally reframe your powerless, limiting, sad, fear-based, depressing narratives. So please do it. Do it now. Reframe relentlessly. Do it like your life depends on it. Because if you know what this hole of depression that I'm describing today feels like, then you know that in fact your life does depend on it. You're not going to start wanting your life again while those unhelpful thoughts rule you. So here's the thing, if you've listened this far. Today is the day. Now is the moment. Find support. Start moving your body every day, something. Interrupt the behavioral routines that reinforce depression. Let go of people who reinforce your worst fears about yourself. Interrupt the internalized depression narratives and reframe them. To start wanting your life again, you will rebuild brick by brick, one day at a time. And you will get through this. This is some of the most courageous work you will ever do. There is another side. Today is the day. Now is the moment. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Before you go, would you take just one moment to give a rating in whatever podcast app you're listening in right now? It's a tiny action that helps to get this podcast out to more people. And I've got more for you. You can get access to free resources, audios, worksheets, and more for practicing courage in your everyday life. Head over to yourcourageouslife.com and become a subscriber, and you'll get access to an entire library of free courageous resources. And if you've ever thought about becoming a coach, or if you want to bring deeper presence and purpose to your work life so that corporate job doesn't feel quite so soul-sucking, check out the CLCC Coach Training Program at teamclcc.com. Thank you again for listening, and I hope that whatever today brings, you meet it with courage.